In the sprawling, sun-scorched landscape of the cinematic West, where heroes were defined by their white hats and villains by their black ones, one man emerged who blurred all the lines. He was a force of nature, with eyes like polished steel and a face carved from granite. He was Lee Van Cleef. More than just an actor, he was an icon who embodied a new kind of menace. Intelligent, sophisticated, and utterly lethal. His story is not just one of a Hollywood heavy. It's a saga of grit, a spectacular rise from obscurity, and the forging of an immortal legacy as the ultimate movie villain. Clarence Leroy Van Cleef Jr. was born on January 9, 1925, in the quiet town of Somerville, New Jersey. The son of a watchmaker of Dutch ancestry, he learned the values of precision and discipline at an early age. But the quiet life wasn't destined to last. As America was drawn into World War II, a 17-year-old Van Cleef answered the call, enlisting in the U.S. Navy. This wasn't a peaceful tour of duty. Van Cleef was trained as a sonarman, a critical role aboard submarine chasers and minesweepers. He served in the treacherous waters of the Caribbean, the Mediterranean, and the Black Sea, hunting for enemy U-boats and clearing naval mines. These were high-stakes, life-or-death operations. The intense, real-world experience of living on the edge forged in him a preternatural calm and a hardened demeanor. It was here, in the crucible of war, that the unflinching, steely gaze that would later define his career was born. Returning from the war, Van Cleef initially pursued a career in accounting, but the stage called to him. After a few amateur productions, he set his sights on Hollywood. With his tall, lean frame, razor-sharp cheekbones, and those piercing eyes, he was typecast almost immediately. He was born to play the bad guy. His big-screen debut came in the 1952 masterpiece, High Noon, where he played Jack Colby, one of the silent, menacing henchmen waiting for the train. Though he had no lines, his presence was unforgettable. For the next decade, Van Cleef became a reliable character actor, the go-to guy for any director needing a ruthless gunslinger, a cold-blooded outlaw, or a two-bit hood. He appeared in countless westerns and crime dramas, often uncredited, usually destined to be gunned down by the film's hero. But just as he was carving out a niche for himself, disaster struck. In 1959, a horrific car crash left him with a shattered knee. Doctors told him he might never ride a horse again. A death sentence for a Western actor. Facing a bleak future, Van Cleef stepped away from the cameras, opening an interior decorating business to make ends meet. For nearly 5 years, the man with the unforgettable face was all but forgotten by the industry he had worked so hard to break into. He was a relic of a bygone era, his career seemingly over. Overnight, Lee Van Cleef became a superstar. Not in Hollywood, but across the Atlantic. Practically reborn in Europe, he found a new home and a whole new audience who saw him not as a typecast villain, but as a leading man worthy of center stage. After his electrifying performances in Sergio Leone's films, Italian directors began lining up to cast him in starring roles. Van Cleef decided to stay in Italy, and in doing so, he became the undisputed king of the spaghetti western genre. No longer relegated to the shadows or playing second fiddle to bigger stars, he now stood tall in the spotlight. He headlined a string of unforgettable westerns that are now considered classics: The Big Gundown, 1966, Day of Anger, 1967, and Death Rides a Horse, 1967, among others. These films showcased his range, not just as a stoic gunfighter but as a complex character actor. He frequently portrayed anti-heroes, aging bounty hunters, grizzled lawmen, and lone wolves who lived by their own code. These were men hardened by time and tragedy, with faces carved by experience and eyes that had seen too much. Van Cleef brought authenticity, depth, and gravitas to each role. He wasn't just playing characters, he embodied them. Audiences were mesmerized. He had the rare ability to command the screen with minimal dialogue, letting a tilt of the head or a piercing glance do the talking. He proved that he was far more than the menacing side characters of his early career. Now, with his name at the top of the marquee, he became a guarantee of action, intensity, and unforgettable storytelling. A Lee Van Cleef movie poster meant you were in for something gritty, stylish, and electrifying. Say it, type it, share it. You never know who else might need to hear your words. As the sun set on the golden age of the spaghetti westerns in the late 1970s, many of Van Cleef's contemporaries faded into obscurity. But not him. In true gunslinger fashion, he didn't ride off quietly. He adapted. He returned to American screens, this time embracing the emerging action and science fiction genres of the 1980s with the same conviction he brought to westerns. His weathered features, piercing eyes, and gravelly voice were tailor-made for playing figures of authority, especially those with a streak of danger. One of his most iconic roles during this period was as the tough and calculating police commissioner Bob Hawke in John Carpenter's Escape from New York, 1981, where he went toe-to-toe with Kurt Russell's rebellious Snake Plissken. Van Cleef's Hawke was equal parts commanding and enigmatic, a man who understood the chaos around him because he'd been through worse. He also faced off against Chuck Norris in The Octagon, 1980, portraying a mysterious martial arts master. Then, in a surprising yet fitting turn, he took on the lead in the television series The Master, 1984, playing a retired American ninja called back into action. It was an unusual role, equal parts camp and gravitas, but Van Cleef threw himself into it with characteristic charm and intensity, winning over a new generation of fans who had never seen his spaghetti western glory days. This late career renaissance showed that he wasn't just a western icon, he was a truly versatile performer who could hold his own in any genre. Behind the steely eyes and screen bravado was a man who had known both hardship and redemption. Van Cleef's personal life was marked by turbulence, 3 marriages, health struggles that traced back to a devastating car accident in the 1950s, and a famously rugged persona that hid a sensitive soul. One oft-repeated piece of trivia reveals a more human side of the legend. He lost the tip of his right middle finger while building a playhouse for his daughter. Rather than hiding the injury, he embraced it. It became a part of his mythos, another imperfection that made him real, and somehow even more formidable. He was a devoted father, a lover of painting and sailing, and a man who maintained his integrity through the highs and lows of a volatile industry. He never pretended to be something he wasn't. There was no artifice, just raw, unfiltered presence. On December 16, 1989, Lee Van Cleef passed away from a heart attack at the age of 64. The curtain fell on a remarkable life and a trailblazing career. Yet his legacy continues to blaze across the cinematic landscape like a sunset over the desert. He didn't just redefine the Western villain, he elevated him. He showed that evil could be nuanced, intelligent, even sympathetic. He turned the traditional black-hatted outlaw into a character worth rooting for, or at least understanding.